Well, what a beautiful night of fighting yet again. UFC 284, absolutely a beautiful event. Really lived up to expectations, and it's rare that we see these Russian Dagestani fighters get pushed, and we saw it happen last night by a 145-pound, 5'6" dude, which says a lot, man. It's not about the build or how big you are. It's really about the heart, the talent, the will to win. And I had predicted. My prediction came very, very close to all happening. There was the Manifield dude who should have won that fight. Got a, I think, unfair point deduction in that third round against Jimmy Crute. Justin Tafa won by KO. Jack Della Maddalena, I got his name right, got his victory as well. Beautiful KO. Stanky leg power. Yair Rodriguez will make a video about him separately because he's a monster. And Alexander Volkanovski came up close. He came up very close, and he put up a great, great fight. But when I woke up this morning, I checked my phone, and every single time ESPN MMA or UFC or Full Violence, all these blog on Instagram posted something about the fight, the result, and I would see people in the comments saying shit like, delete this, or robbery, or, oh, Volk should have won this. Now, I'm not with that, bro. It was a great fight, but this happens often when, like, a very dominant champion, for a certain amount of time, that they just have this invincible aura, and when a guy just, touches them, they just do something to disrupt, their momentum. It feels like, they've completely changed the sport world. And this is how it felt. Volkanovski had an incredible performance, but he did not win this fight. It was pretty clear that he didn't win it. And I predicted that Volk was going to win it. And honestly, it would have probably made it look better for me. But I just cannot say that if Volk would have won that, probably would have been one of the biggest robberies. It's crazy because we watched this fight and it was clear that the whole stadium was for Volk. Every single time he would land a little kick, it just made it feel like every single thing that he did was bigger than it was. So it's difficult after that to try to be unbiased. Even though I know that sometimes I say some biased shit, I have to admit it. I have to admit that sometimes I say some biased shit. Now, if we're not being biased, we're being unbiased. We're trying to be fair here. This fight was not a Volk W. I was gonna say it was not close, but it was close. Like, every round was close. You know what I mean? But it wasn't like, the round could have gone to Volk. It was just like, it was a close round. Like, surprisingly, Volk actually pushed Makhachev. But every round, to me, other than the fifth round, was won by Makhachev pretty clearly. And it's wild because even on the feet, Makhachev was doing most of the damage there. He didn't shoot very often. The only time he shot for takedown was when he was against the fence, or when he would get pressure by Volk. When Volk would, step on a gas pedal and try to pressure a lot, that's when Makhachev would shoot. But Makhachev was able to dictate the pace a lot. His counter shots were beautiful. It was an overall very, very great performance. Now, we have to look at it that way. Islam Makhachev was very surprising in his abilities to strike with Volk, right? I think we can all agree that Islam Makhachev was surprisingly better on the feet, and Volk was surprisingly better on the ground, wrestling, grappling-wise, right? But the difference here is Islam, with his striking, actually made some damage, while Volk, with his grappling, did not. What he did was defend the grappling exchanges that Islam attempted. So it's a different improvement by both. You can say it just as if it's 50-50, Volk was better on the ground, Islam was better on the feet, but that's not actually the case. They both surprised, but at the end of the day, when you look at it in general, it was not like Volk dominated on the ground. It's not like Volk took Islam down for 5 rounds and completely mauled him. That's not what happened. He took him down for a minute at the end of the 5th round. But over the course of 5 rounds, what he did mostly is just defend the takedowns very well. Defend the chokes, defend the submissions. That's what he did most. So it's like defending takedowns, defending grappling exchanges does not give you the same amount of point as someone who is actually throwing more shots on the feet, giving more looks on the feet, and just being more efficient on the feet. Those are 2 different things, and I think the guy that is actually striking better on the feet gets more point than the guy who defends more the grappling exchanges. That's just my opinion. While the thing is, because we've never seen Makhachev's grappling get, shut down that way, it's like we go crazy. Our eyes go wide open. We're like, wow, this is actually happening right now. Makhachev cannot really do anything on the ground with Volk. And I had predicted that because I truly believe that Volk had that like body type, that body style. He was compact, small, short, strong, and it was going to be tough for Makhachev to keep him down. So I predicted that, but I still don't think that because Volk was able to neutralizes Makhachev's takedown attempt, that means he won that fight or he won those exchanges or anything like that. So I don't think we should act like Islam had a bad night, and I think we should put flour on this new champion as well. We're putting this extreme dominance on him, and I find it a bit sad for Islam because he has so much pressure on his shoulder. He has so much expectation to live up to because of Khabib, because of his trainers, because of what other people says about him. So he kind of has to live up to that name, and if he doesn't live up to that name, not only are we not putting that much respect on his name, but it's also like we're disrespecting him, because that performance was an incredible performance by Islam as well. So I think it's very important to put some respect on both of these guys' names because they because they improved, because they showed great level of heart. I will say this though, I think if that fight was 2-3 more rounds, Volkanovski probably would have won. Volkanovski had clearly a better gas tank at the end of that 5th round. He seemed to be stronger. He seemed to figure out the puzzle a little bit. Sometimes it takes time to figure out, what works for you in a fight. And it felt like, as the rounds went by, Volk was catching up a little bit. And that at the end of the 5th round, he seemed like, he was getting there. But it's kind of the same arguments where, Pereira almost got finished at the end of the 1st round. Well, Pereira wouldn't have put himself in that trouble at the end of the 1st round to try to finish the round hard if it wasn't because it was the end of the round as well. So it's like, I don't know if Makhachev would have actually, let himself be in that situation, be in that trouble at the end of the 5th round if it wasn't the end of the 5th round. So I guess I'm just contemplating right now, but it did feel that was just a fact that Volkanovski really had a better gas tank at the end of the 5th round. And arguably, Volkanovski should still be the pound-for-pound king right now, right? Because we've said this before, Volkanovski fights at 145, Islam fights at 155. So even if Islam wins against Volk, that doesn't mean he's the pound-for-pound king. It's not like they're both in the same weight class fighting at the same, at the same size, same weight. Pound-for-pound is clearly the definition. Pound-for-pound is literally the definition of, depending on weight classes, who's the best fighters, and depending on those weight classes, if you put them in the same size, same identical weight, I think Volk wins, and I think Volk should still be considered the pound for pound number 1 right now. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he lost that fight, and I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible here, and I just don't want to see no Islam slander from this shit, bro. He did well. He's our champion. And he proved himself. Outside of Charles Oliveira, Islam hadn't really fought a top 5, top 2 level fighters in his own category, let alone pound for pound. So, for him to show that heart, for him to show that willingness, for him to show that striking abilities against one of the best strikers in the division, put some respect on Islam's name just as much as you put respect on Volk's name. Because if Volk is as good as you think he is, which he is, then Islam should get that respect as well. So I want to see it both ways. I think this is the type of fight where both guys showed tremendous heart and deserves a ton of respect. It was not a robbery. It was clearly, we saw Weasel dropped the video earlier today. He, even him, showed that it was a clear 48-47 for Islam, even possibly a 49-46. What made the difference in the second round was a knockdown. I don't think it was even a knockdown. We can go look at it again. I truly don't believe it was a knockdown. I think Volk threw a right hand, and as he threw a right hand, it connected, and he was going for a takedown at the same time. You know what I mean? I don't know how we consider that a knockdown, because if we do, then there was a lot of times where Islam actually knocked Volk down as well. A few times, dropped him to a knee, made him stumble backwards. It's like there's a few times that it happened during the fight as well. So I don't know which way we're going, but even in that second round, which the Weasel gave to Volkanovski, Islam had landed more shots, more significant strikes, more heavy attacks, more medium attacks. The only thing that made the difference was the one knockdown that I argue wasn't really a knockdown. But hey, that's just my point. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible here. They both surprised us. It was a great fight. And yeah, maybe they'll run it back in the future. It would be great to see, because if Volk makes those adjustments early on, he realizes, he's human just like me. I can push him, push the pace, push the pressure a little bit more. I think he could have won that fight. Let me know what you guys think down below. This was a great fight, though. Great fight.